Okay. Um, Hello to everyone. I uh, want to continue on today with the early patriarchs, and here we're going to be talking about Neng and the Platform Sutra. Before I do that, I do want to express an apology, which I expressed directly to Harry last week. I interrupted him, and we had a bit of a misunderstanding as to what I wanted him to do, and it had to do with the poem with the water that's still in the bridge moving, and that was right in my notes of what I was doing from the previous lecture, and I wanted him to um, use his skills to have people probe that and understand it in a very deep way. And being doing this for a few lectures, I know it would take uh, at least a half an hour more of probing before people could begin to stop thinking and looking into it. And that's not an excuse to interrupt them. I was a bit tired that day, and so my interest was to have the group try to get into a samadhi state by looking into that poem. And but I didn't interrupt his lecture. Again, it wasn't what I was thinking that we had a meeting of the minds on, and we didn't. And so I apologize to him because that was very rude on my part to do that, and that's not something that I'm very happy about. The I'm very zealous in terms of trying to present the Dharma to you all, and so that's what was kind of in my mind at that time, not of the feelings of Harry. So I feel very bad because I hold him with great high esteem. So again, I apologize to him, and we'll continue on. You know, hopefully that would be something out of a few thousand lectures that I've done. My most inappropriate behavior that I can think of. So in any case, we'll continue on, and we're talking about the Platform Sutra with Neng, and we've I want to kind of revisit the time period after there was the writing on the walls about the Bodhi tree and the mirror stand bright, and originally they're not there, and then he's about ready to leave there, and it's the evening before he's going to leave, and essentially he's sitting in his master's quarters, and the master has covered them with a robe, so that they can keep themselves secretive in terms of what they're talking about. And Yulia, this is the Master Shen Hua's book on the Platform Sutra. So I don't know if anybody has a PDF to that or not. Um, but in any case, where we're at is that it says the patriarch covered them with his precept sash so that they could not be seen. And he explained the Diamond Sutra for him down to the line, one should produce a thought that is nowhere supported. This is a pretty amazing instruction. What does it mean? Think about this. What does this mean? It had such an impact on Neng that although he had achieved realizations before he had even gone to the fifth patriarch's um, temple, but this struck him so strong that one should produce a thought that is nowhere supported. At this point, Neng was like, you could say, an egg that was cracked all over. And when it was cracked all over, it didn't take much to shatter it. And it is something that this happens, the when something comes up that is startling to the psyche, you could say. All of a sudden, the psyche just breaks down. It it is no longer there, and all of a sudden, what happens is that the mind's eye immediately turns, and no longer is Hui Ning seeing things from the viewpoint of Hui Ning, but he's seeing everything from the perception of mind itself, such as in the Heart Sutra, when Avalokitesvara perceived that all five skandha were empty, he's using the mind's eye perception to do this. And this is why it was such an important thing, because the wisdom that poured in at that point was phenomenal. It's something way beyond any kind of a conception as to it, because at that moment, because Hui Ning is no longer there, as mind, it isn't that mind seeps in. This is an erroneous way. We could say that it's not, nor is it an implosion of the ego. It's an immediate, you could say, expansion, infinite expansion of perception. And this expansion includes not just space, but time itself. And all the clarity comes in that moment. So when he's saying one should produce a thought that is nowhere supported, where do your thoughts, where are they supported at in your mind? Do you know? Is it in your consciousness, in your ego? When you say, I think I want chocolate ice cream, somewhere something says, I want that, I crave that. I really like that. But such thoughts are not really supported. They're just cravings. And when one's mind is cleared of all of these passions, kleshas, the mind is free. And that's what's really, really important here, because you may have read this before and you just go right by it. We don't really penetrate and look at what's being said here. And it's funny because I'm using Shenhua Master's version, which is kind of interesting, his commentary, and I have a feeling that he had a very strong affinity with Hui Ning, and some of his statements are ones in which there he gets really excited at these points. And I'm not saying in a bad way, but in a good way, to say, look at this, look how what's happening here. Whatever was said, Hui Ning took it so sincerely. Can you imagine? They're underneath like little kids, making a tent over them. And he's telling them this, and he's telling them this in the dark, and he's telling him that this part of the Diamond Sutra, one should produce a thought that is nowhere supported. And do you even begin to understand what that means? But it's not something that is the wisdom of the everyday world. This particular message comes from the a deep esoteric understanding of how mind works, and seeing that if there is nothing that's there that supports it, then it's liberation. It goes all the way back to Bodhidharma, and where he says, to him, bring me this mind of yours that suffers, and it cannot be found. Hueca could not find it. He was looking all over, and there was nothing there to support all of the suffering that he had. That's pretty amazing. And from all the way from the first patriarch all the way through then to Hongjin and to Hui Ning, they're still echoing this. What is this? It's the echo of Ekayana, this just mind, single mind. And this was what was the frustration of Ananda in the Shurangama Sutra, where Ananda was at wit's end, literally, because he could not find where his mind was, and he was literally left shaken because he could not penetrate, and as Hui Neng did, and was able to see that it's just mind. We don't have to eliminate ego or consciousness or anything. We just have to clarify it. And this clarification is critical in terms of how we see things. If we see them in the proper way, then all of a sudden the whole world makes sense. Not only that, but this liberation is something that one attunes to the purity of mind itself. This is very, very difficult for us to understand because we always say, okay, something is pure and something is impure or sacred or profane. And the Chan masters are always going without thinking of what's sacred or profane. You know, what is your original mind? That's what was coming up later on when he was talking to Hui Ming and giving him instruction. And so all of this keeps following this wonderful path of Buddha Dharma. And it stays true all the way through Chan. And that's what's so amazing about Chan. And people sometimes they just think, okay, well, it's just Dasu, it's just sitting on a cushion. And you sit on the cushion and you're waiting that you're going to get enlightened some way by just simply sitting on this cushion. But it is not in this way. And if we practice in this way, it doesn't work. And you see the masters from Matsu to Baizong to Hui Ning, Ling Chi, always scolding people. Don't practice in this way. Don't practice thinking that you're going to get something and something's going to come in from the outside and it's going to come into you. Quite to the contrary, they're saying turn the mind's eye inward. This is something that's very difficult for us to understand. We try to interpret this term of turning the mind's eye inward in a practical, in a worldly sense. And it doesn't work in this way. It works more like in quantum mechanics. I'll probably wake up Michael somewhere. But it works like quantum mechanics where one thinks outside of what is conceivable, because they look at the things of the potentiality of reality and dimensions. And I think they've gotten up to like 12 dimensions or whatever that they posit could exist. And the Buddha mind is beyond all of these dimensions, but not separate from them. And it's an interesting thing because we have to kind of withhold our human experiences when we're practicing, whether we're walking around or we're sitting on a cushion. But we don't do that. We're always putting the ego right there, right next to us, like some kind of a bad life caddy. In the golf, they always have these caddies that pull the golf clubs, and then they tell you, I think you ought to use I'm not a golfer, but let's say a 9-iron to hit this right here, and you should go over to this side, and the wind's blowing this way, and do this. And that's what the ego does when you're sitting there meditating. Gilbert, you're doing a great job. You're not thinking at all. Was that a color? Did you just see a bodhisattva? And they're there going like, let's look at that. That's interesting. And they're constantly getting in the way, literally getting in the way. And yet, come on, get off of me. And you have to become adept at showing that those are projections on the mind wall. And when we do that, then we see that all of those things are not supported. They are just simply impermanent reflections on the wall that are constantly changing. But because of our ignorance, and Shenhua Master is much more brutal. He says, because you're stupid, you don't see it. You want to practice Chan, stop being stupid. Stop holding on to the ego. Stop doing these things. And so he's much more abrupt with it. We say ignorant, and that's enough. People will take that as an insult. But the ignorance is the inability to understand how something works. I've always talked about the computers. If there's something going on with a computer and you try to fix it, you have to know how the computer works to be able to fix it. That's the first thing you have to know. And so that is the shortcut in the practice of Chan or Buddha Dharma. Everything is created by the mind. If everything's created by the mind, it is not supported by anything extraneous to the mind. And if everything is mind, where can you have a foundation for that other than mind itself? So they say, well, what is the substance of mind? Fa Yang said that. Mind is the substance of mind. What is the meaning of mind? Mind is the meaning. Everything comes here where they talk about where does the one return to? Mind. And we cannot call it a one as opposed to what else? It's even beyond that. That's why they use the term thus. So I wanted to start with that because this is just a very small piece of the sutra that speaks volumes. We have to know, why did Hui Ning become deeply enlightened when he heard this? What was it that was there that made him truly understand the self-nature of mind? And that is what is important here. Later on, Master Shenhua is talking about that there's different types of prajna, and one of them is a literary prajna. And a lot of people talk about literary prajna. They can talk about things and they say, oh, wisdom is this and wisdom is that and whatever it is. And it's just stuff they read in a book. That doesn't help you. It makes you sound very, very intelligent, but yet in Master Shenhua's eyes, you're very stupid because you only want to hear yourself speak. And then there's a different kind of a prajna. And I was really happy to hear this. Let me see if I can find it. Taking it kind of out of the order. Essentially, the second one, the other one is contemplative prajna, which is good. Contemplative prajna is it's still, in this kind of contemplation, it still maintains thought, but one is still looking into it and trying to see that. And the less thought there is, and the more practice there is, it helps. And then he says, and then there is real mark prajna. So when we see what are the marks of the practice, anybody know the three marks? Nobody? Senta?
3 marks of existence?
Yes.
Impermanence, dukkha, and yourself.
And so to truly know these 3 marks of existence are very, very important, because we in probing those, there comes a time when there is a realization of those marks, not simply a literary one, not simply a contemplation, but the mind is in harmony with those. Everything that it sees runs in this way. There is no self. There's nothing to support that thought. There's no person there. No, everything is constantly changing, so it cannot be real in this way. Why? Because it all belongs to mind. And he also mentioned, which was very interesting, that in the sutras, there's different lines of communication. There's the literary line, which is what we're reading now and using contemplative. But Shenhua Master also mentioned there's an esoteric line. And that's what's important, because I've been saying this to you for many years now, that you only read the literary line, but you do not see the esoteric line. It's as if it's another wave band, but it's been there from the very beginning. It was what was communicated and passed down from Bodhidharma to Hueca, and on from all the way through. It is in this way. It is the understanding that everything is created by the mind, but not simply to say that, but to truly realize that. And this is what has happened to Neng underneath the master's cloak. And so now it's time for him to leave, because a lot of people are going to be jealous. It's kind of interesting thing, in an interesting time where people see things and they say, oh, well, this person, you would think that they'd follow Samantabhadra, rejoice in the merits of others, but people actually wanted to do harm to him or to claim something that didn't belong to them. And sometimes that's the way it is. People will want to put others down instead of rejoicing in the merits of others, just simply because they practice hard. That doesn't make any sense, but it happens, and that's what was happening here to Neng. So he had to go on the run. But before he went on the run, the master gave him this further instruction. Excuse me, I take that back. Did I lose you guys?
We can hear you, Gilbert.
You can hear me? I lost my picture. I'm sorry. I touched my screen somewhere. Okay, I'm back. Okay. He has now talking to the fifth patriarch and saying how unexpected. The self-nature is originally pure in itself. How unexpected. The self-nature is originally neither produced or destroyed. How unexpected. The self-nature is originally complete in itself. How unexpected. The self-nature is originally without movement. The bridge moves, not the water. How unexpected. The self-nature can produce 10,000 dharmas. So he's seeing that everything comes from the self-nature of mind. 10,000 dharmas or phenomena is just simply a number to show incalculable, infinite numbers of variations of things, of appearances, but they all appear in mind, and they all are in accordance with causes and conditions produced in mind. We are looking at Neng immediately after this deep realization and this very sudden enlightenment. Before he realized mind, but here he has entered a very profound state, a very deep state of enlightenment, where he is not talking. He's not saying a word. It's mind. And just imagine, he's just looking around. He's looking at everything and going, it's mine. All of this. I didn't expect that. Why didn't you expect it? Because he was still using the conventional consciousness, not the super mundane perception of mind itself. But now he's turned his mind around and he's looking at everything and is stunned, absolutely stunned. Of course, he's going to be stunned. This is something that cannot be experienced by a sentient being. If he's thinking that he is experiencing this, then it would go up in a puff of smoke. But he is reflecting the Buddha mind here, and just so surprised. And it's just like they were saying that the Bodhisattva straddle the samsara and mind. And right now he's saying how unexpected. That's from the samsara side, but the other side he is mind itself. It is absolutely incredible. But we read by this so fast. We miss it. Why? Why should this is so absolutely incredible? It's not something that we can go and say, okay, a scholar, well, Neng may not have written that, may not have been Shen Hui or quiet, shut up. That's scholarly talk. We can talk about this on the side. But you will never know mine. You will never know what's happening here, irregardless of who's saying it. This is unexpected. How could it be expected? Because we just use this mind. We don't even know how to use it. We have no clue. Have you ever been in your car and you go, what is this button for? Oh, that button is to do this. I never knew it existed. That's weird. And afterwards, you're pushing the button all the time. No, I found that out on my own car like last week. And I realized this button could do certain things on my map and access stuff. And I never knew it was there. It was unexpected. Of course, I cannot say that I was enlightened. I was enlightened to how my car works. But in any case, it is something that is very amazing here. And you have to see it. Don't just pass it by. Really study it. We've only gone through like 2 little stanzas of this sutra, and already it speaks volumes. So it says, the 5th patriarch knew of Hui Neng's enlightenment to his original nature and said to him, studying the Dharma without recognizing the original mind, there's no benefit. So he's saying, if you study the Dharma and you try to hold on to it like in a dual sense that you are reading this and this person said this, then there really isn't a great benefit. You'll be a better sentient being. But in the comparison of what, if you really practice it sincerely, what you could get, I mean, it's incalculable. Even if you practiced dana, is it dana or dana? Dana. Okay, I have to remember dana. Okay, so if you practice dana, just giving, generosity, and as in the Diamond Sutra, if all the sands of the Ganges River were Ganges rivers and all those sands were treasure chests you gave to the poor, it would be great, but not as much as reciting 4 lines from the sutra. And you go, well, that's like kind of I would think it might be an exaggeration, right? I mean, think of the tax write-off on giving all of that stuff. But all that belongs to samsara. And so it's unexpected. It's unexpected that there could be such a great merit to that. But the Diamond Sutra continues to keep giving and giving and giving from generation after generation after generation. It's truly amazing. And when we see the things in this way, it changes our perspective. The perspective is not the perspective of a sentient being, it's the perspective of the Buddha. So he says, if one could recognize one's original mind and sees one original nature, then one is called a great hero, a teacher of gods and humans, a Buddha. And it's very interesting because one of the definitions of a bodhisattva, and I did mention it in my bodhisattva lecture series, is a hero or a warrior or a combination of a hero warrior, meaning that someone is willing to stand up to all of the illusions and cut through them and be fearless in this. This is not very easy for us because we feel sometimes that we're standing on the thinnest wire and fighting a whole horde of an army, and any slightest cut will knock us down. So we run away from it. But we at some point need to cut that wire ourselves, and in turn, in the transcendent wisdom, there is a great power there. Not the power, that we see on TV where you always see these Chinese kung fu movies where the people are flying and doing all sorts of stuff and pushing the people with their power. And the power is the power of wisdom itself. I don't say these things for you to start going, I want power, I want to do that. No, that's foolish. The power is the power of prajna, of wisdom, this deep wisdom. And that's what's important is that the more wisdom you have, the easier it is to live life. And it changes your perspective with respect to what your purpose is here on earth. And I'm not reading all of the passages. I'm just picking a few out, but they're fairly close. And then the fifth patriarch then was talking to him and said, listen to this verse. He says, with feeling comes the planting of the seed. Because of the ground, the fruit is born again. Without feeling, there is no seed at all. Without that nature, there is no birth either. So here, you could say is a very shortened version of the 12 Nidanas. And what he's saying is that with feeling comes the seeds. Now, here probably he's referring to the seeds from the Yogacara school of the bija seeds, B-I-J-A. And these seeds are planted in the eighth consciousness, the alaya vijnana consciousness, or sometimes called the storehouse consciousness. And they are accessed from the seventh consciousness in accordance with causes and conditions. But if there is no seventh consciousness, because of a realization of mind, the seventh all the way through to the first fail. But because there's feeling, the seeds rain down and they perfume the present moment. How do they perfume it? As if you'd said, oh, okay, somebody would say, okay, do you want this broccoli dish or do you want a apple pie? And you go, well, that's a tough one. Let me think. Do I want broccoli or do I want apple pie? And so of course the bija seeds are going down saying, take the apple pie. What are you, a fool? And so that's what happens is that because of feeling, you have a positive feeling towards apple pie. And so you will take that unless you just went to your doctor and the doctor says, if you don't stop eating apple pie, you're going to die very soon. Then you have to say, I'll take the broccoli. But you still have the cravings for the apple pie. Just ask any diabetic and you'll see that. Because of the ground, the fruit is born again. So the ground is the alaya vijnana. What ground is the alaya vijnana? Is mind. So he's telling you how mind works. Because of these things come into being. And but without them, without this kind of a wrong view of the world, then those things don't happen. It doesn't mean that everything disappears. It just means that the mind sees things very, very clearly. And that's what we're doing. This is prajna. This is wisdom. This is a choice that one makes, and this is the practice. In the beginning, again, it's literary to contemplative, and then to when we see it as the three marks of existence. Okay. From the ancient times, the Buddha only transmits the original substance to Buddha. Master secretly transmits the original mind to Master. Since the robe is the source of a contention, it should stop with you. Do not transmit it, for if you do, your life will hang by a thread. So here is the end of the patriarch listings, and it stops with Hui Ning. Doesn't mean that the generations, there isn't a successive generations. It's only that they're no longer considered a patriarch, simply because people are beginning to see that that could present a problem. And in fact, they're not foretelling. They're saying it's as if they're foretelling, but this is written after the fact, where Hui Ning now becomes recognized as the sixth patriarch over Shen Shu. And because Hui Ning's disciple, Shen Hui, decided to push his line of generation. And so the thing is here it stops, but again, from there, there's still tracings of the masters from then on. They just don't call them patriarchs anymore. And so Hui Ning went out, and as he was instructed, you need to get out of here and go very, very far away. Remember, Hui Ning at this point is not a monastic. And so when he leaves, then what happens is that a lot of people chase him. And one of the people that was chasing him was a very skilled person. I think he was from the military. That we were talking about Hui Ming. And Hui Ming actually caught up with him, and and I've said this story before in great detail, but I'm still going to repeat part of it because I think it's very, very important. He catches up with him, and Hui Ning goes into the forest and leaves the robe and the bowl on a rock. Hui Ming tries to pick the bowl and the robe up, but he can't pick them up. They're immovable. And finally, he says, he calls out to the forest, I don't come here for the robe and the bowl. I come here for the Dharma. And so then finally, Hui Ning comes out of the forest. And so he'd said, Hui Ming said to him, I hope that the cultivator will teach the Dharma for my sake. Hui Ning said, since you have come for the Dharma, you may put aside all conditions. Do not give rise to a single thought. And I will teach it to you clearly. This is very, very important what he's saying to him. He's saying, put aside all conditions, all preconceived notions, anything that you're thinking about, anything that you want to attain or grasp or push away, whatever, all of those are conditions or appearances in mind. Put them aside. Don't give rise to a single thought. So this is all the way back to Bodhidharma's wall gazing. You say, clear your mind. So before he taught him, he's telling him this, to clear his mind, to do the things in a proper way. And he said, after a time, Hui Ning said, so it took a while for him to calm himself down, for Hui Ming to calm himself down. He was so excited. He'd been chasing Hui Ning for so long. And now he has to calm himself down. When Neng noticed that he had sufficiently calmed himself, perhaps reached samadhi, and was just simply sitting quietly, then he said to him, with no thought of good and with no thoughts of evil, just at this moment, what is the superior one's, Hui Ming's, original face? So he's saying to him, you are a superior one. What is your original face? And so this is important, because with this, he's saying to him that you are not Hui Ming. You may be in a body that is known as Hui Ming, but your original face. He's asking him, what is your original nature after all of this? If there's no right and there's no wrong, no sacred, no profane, just in this moment, what perceives that this is your original face? And he's not talking about a second face behind this red meatball face. It's just a term saying your original face. What do you face? It's the perception of mind. The perception of mind faces the Dharmakaya. Right? Pretty good point, huh? It's as deep as this. This is the esoteric aspect of what he's talking about. Your original face is what is perceiving. They are not two, they are not one. It is just thus. And he's asking him to look into it and to see, what is this that is perceiving at this moment? If there is not a perception from a sentient being, then the skandhas are disengaged, yet mind is still there. And what it does is it takes what was believed to be your impression of things that was obscuring the original viewpoint, and now puts it over to the rest of the things, and that you can see clearly. You can even see yourself. You see it so clearly. What a fool. That's it. That doesn't exist. What baffled Ananda, he could not see it because he was still clinging to a life and being, a personality, and an ego. He could not see it. So this is all happening right here. All of these lessons. But they're happening instantaneously. Hui Neng is using his power of the mind to help him, to try to bring him to this greater realization. And it worked. It worked so well that Hui Ming, he changed his name. After that, he changed his name to Dao Ming because he didn't want to confuse it with Hui Neng. He didn't want to use that name because he had so much respect for Hui Neng. And then he was asked, what should I do now? And so he told Hui Ming that he needed to go to, there's a little bit more here that I missed. And he said, at these words, Hui Ming was greatly enlightened. And it said, Hui Ming asked further, apart from the secret speech and secret meanings just spoken, is there another secret meaning? So he's looking at it and going, I got this much, but is there more? And anybody who has achieved even a small realization would know you haven't gotten to the end by any stretch of the imagination. Mind is absolutely incredible until one reaches, the high bodhisattva stage or to become a Buddha. Mind is constantly revealing its abilities and its access to information. It is very, very amazing in this way. So he's asking him, this is pretty good as it is already. And but is there more? Hui Neng said, what has been spoken to you is not a secret. If you turn the illumination inward, the secret is with you. So here again, he's talking about turn the mind's eye inward. So the secret is with you, because as you turn the mind's eye inward, this is the esoteric. What cannot be spoken about. You have realized it, but it's not you that realized it. Mind realized that mind is mind, and that every sentient being possesses Buddha nature. All you have to do is turn the mind's eye inward, and that will happen. And this deep wisdom produces the compassion that enables people to choose a bodhisattva path to help liberate others, instead of just saying, oh, I'm so great. Then your realization would be very, very shallow, and would be fleeting, would be gone in a moment. But if one exhibits this in their practice and everything that they do, that's always there. Not only that, but it is not a secret. It is something that a bodhisattva would want to share with others. Hui Ming said, although Hui Ming was at Huang Mei, he had not yet awakened to his original faith. Now that he has been favored with this instruction, he is like one who drinks water and knows for himself whether the water is cold or warm. The cultivator is now Hui Ming's master. And so then Hui Ning said, if you feel that way, then you and I have the same master. And said Huang Mei, so this is referring back to the fifth patriarch. Protect yourself well. Hui Ming asked further, where should I go? And he said, stop at Yan and dwell at Meng. And he's referring to this district, Yang district, and Meng is a mountain. And it's kind of interesting because Shen Hua added some commentary to this that was kind of interesting, where Hui Ming actually helped deliver a ghost and at Hui Ming Mountain. And now there's every year there's always a ceremony to acknowledge that and for delivering ghosts. So it's kind of an interesting little sidelight that was there. Okay. I'm going to take an excerpt of this next part. And he's addressing certain officials, and he's saying, today in this gathering of the magistrate and officials of Bhikshu, Bhikshuni, Taoist, laymen, there is not one of you who is not here because accumulated ages of karmic conditions and planted good roots. In common, you now have the opportunity to hear the sudden teachings, which is a cause of obtaining Dharma. And this is important because this is a way that we should be aware of at all times, that we are aware that in any given moment, the people who are around you and they can be around you electronically in the distance or whether, but are connected to you in any way. All of the people who were there, they are there because of past practices, and whether it's a good experience or a bad experience. Here it's a good experience because he's going to be talking about the sudden teaching. So he's saying you have the great roots to be able to hear this teaching. But in any time, wherever you're at, you have to understand it's all there because of causes and conditions. The present moment is a great instructor as to the 12 nidanas and pratika samappada. Pratika samappada is not other than the Buddha mind. So when we see things clearly, then it's different. But if we see that and say, woe's me, or I'm such a wise person, or whatever, you mess everything up. But if you see that clearly, all these things are happening, then that's what's more important. And then it says, this teaching has been handed down by former sages. It is not Neng's own wisdom. This is really, really important in terms of what he's saying. He's not saying, hey, this is my wisdom, or I'm a very wise person. He's just saying, hey, it's just like I'm just passing it down from generation to generation. It's been there from the very, very beginning. And so I'm just passing it to you. You who wish to hear the teaching of the former sages should first purify your minds. Now here, the idea of purification is very, very important, because purification is not in the way that, we would go to some hot house and hit ourselves with branches and put sage around us and do whatever, to purify ourselves. It's not that kind of purifying. Purifying just simply means to bring the mind to the present moment, just like he was saying to Neng, clear your mind. Clear your mind of all conditions and do not think. So in that moment of not thinking, then that is the proper vessel to be able to receive this teaching. After hearing it, cast aside your doubts, and that way you will be no different than the sages of the past. So again, here is difficult because there's not one of you that hasn't had doubts about something in the Dharma. And they may be great doubts in terms of it. But I'm not telling you to go into this and study this blindly. What I'm saying is that if you want to know the way, you have to put faith in mind. You have to do that and put aside your doubts. You have to allow the mind to do its thing. And if not, then essentially it's like your consciousness and your ego is there going like, when is it going to turn into mind? I don't have all my lifetime. I want to get this done fairly quickly. And of course, when you have that kind of an attitude, you get nothing. But if you have faith in what's there, then that will purify your practice, and you will be practicing in the proper way. Now we get to the section on prajna, and this is chapter 2 of the Platform Sutra. We talked about prajna in terms of what it represents, and sometimes they talk about it in terms of mahaprajna, meaning this greatest prajna. And from the Heart Sutra, we find out that is called Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, this unexcelled wisdom. And it's interesting because this unexcelled wisdom is in the Heart Sutra also referenced, there is no wisdom nor any attainment, but that's Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. This kind of wisdom is not a worldly wisdom. It is one that is experienced. And I have a little bit of time. this kind of makes me laugh. There was a Mexican comedian, George Lopez, and he was talking about wisdom, and he said Mexican mothers and Mexican fathers have a different way of teaching their kids wisdom. So he says, if you're in the kitchen and your young child goes and he's about to touch a boiling pot, and he says, "Mama, is this hot?" She goes, "No, mijo, don't do that, please. Don't touch it, it'll hurt you. Hurts really bad. Okay." He goes, "Ooh, burn," and so he doesn't do it. If you ask if the father is there, and the little boy goes to touch the pot, and he says, "Is this hot?" The father says, "Why don't you touch it and find out?" So which one would he remember the most? I'm not saying in this joke that he was putting his hand in fire. It's just touching a hot pot. You would touch it and you'd go, "Wow, this is hot." So you remember that. You would know hot clearly by touching that pot. The other one, you just know, don't do this because this is going to happen. But that direct gnosis is what's important. And this is like a joke, but here with prajna, the prajna that we're talking about is Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which is not prajna at that point. It is the perception of mind. And when used properly, it clarifies everything. It sees everything and says, look, there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, or any attainment. Why? Because there's not a sentient being that has a skandha that is real or unreal. It's not empty or it's not real. And so the prajna here is very pivotal in terms of this, as I mentioned before, this second turning of the Dharma wheel, where we look at things and we see things from the viewpoint of this unexcelled wisdom. And that unexcelled wisdom is a perception of the mind itself, turning the mind's eye inward to see all appearances. It in and of itself is not an appearance. It does not have a form. There is nothing there. In the skandha, they have form, sensation, perception, volition, consciousness. But mind sees that as the three marks of existence. In a gnosis, in a knowing way, not just simply labeling them, and saying, "Oh, these are the three marks." It knows it. It has the gnosis of that. And that comes from this direct realization of prajna, on this esoteric level. And I use the word esoteric. I don't mean it to say esoteric Buddhism, and there's some categories or schools like that. But what I mean is that it is this meaning that cannot be explained in words. It has to be directly experienced. My talk today is speaking in words, but on a different channel, there's an invitation for you to experience this for yourself. Not when I say for yourself, but for the self-nature of mind. If you throw a rock in any direction, you're going to hit the self-nature of mind. You cannot throw a rock and throw it beyond the realms of existence or non-existence. It's going to hit self-nature of mind. Shifu used to always say that you're always swimming in it, swimming. Wherever you're going, you're swimming in this deep prajna. We just don't realize it. We take it for a life and being or ego or personality. And as a result of that, we hold on to the idea of suffering. So this is kind of the prelude to the next chapter, which I'll get into next week, of wisdom. so I really want you to kind of work on that and see how this goes. This is really good stuff, And sometimes we go, oh, okay, well, the Diamond Sutra, we'll read that. The Platform Sutra, Few of you get to the Shurangama Sutra, very less few get to Vimalakirti Sutra or Queen Sharmala's Lion's Roar Sutra. Some of you, like Harry, really go into the Lotus Sutra or Vatamsaka Sutra, whatever. But there's all these sutras out there, and they're all really saying the same thing, is they're looking at everything from this Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, from this wisdom perspective. And that's what's important, that it's never taught that way. Somehow that's missed, but that's the shortcut. Everything's created by the mind. So that's the lecture for today. We'll continue on next week, and we'll go further with it. So I hope that this was beneficial to you in terms of more of your understanding of mind, the perception of mind, and the Maha Prajna. Okay, thank you. I'll take questions now. No questions? Nobody wants to dance today? Leave me feeling lonely. Yes, Michael.
Okay. Why couldn't he pick up the bowl and what was it again? The other thing.
The bowl.
Yeah.
There's some things in this world that transcend what we believe to be the reality of things. In a purely samsaric setting, of course, by the laws of physics, one would say, if I have so much ability, lifting ability, I should be able to move this or that. But it cannot, sometimes it cannot happen, just simply because of the power of the mind. And when one sees something like that, it is something that it shocks the senses, because it doesn't follow what is the normal course. If you remember, there's the story of Shakyamuni Buddha when he was an ascetic, and he was looking for some kind of a sign, and there was a branch in the water, and he said, if this is a true practice, may this branch go upstream, in which it did. And so when something like that is experienced, it's difficult to then not have faith in that. So things like that happen because this world is a dream. We think that the world is real, and we think that it's governed by that. But the power of the mind is very strong, and it actually can manipulate appearances. Of course, Shakyamuni Buddha was not a magician. He didn't want to go around and show tricks to people. What good would that be? But for his own insight, he was able to do that. And the cosmos, or whatever, I shouldn't say cosmos, but mind itself, favored him at that moment because of cosmic conditions to show that this world and its rules of physics and stuff are not necessarily real. And so it's very interesting. Sometimes things like that happen in your life, and it's it's very, very stunning when something like that happens, because there's some faith behind that. And so sometimes those things are contrived or made up, and sometimes they're real. And this one was real enough that it shocked Hui Ming to the point where he was open to that. He realized that the secret was not in the robe and the bowl. It wasn't the robe and the bowl that it as an inanimate object became so heavy. But it was that there was a reality beyond what he believed to be there. So that was the lesson that was there. And so if you had run across something like that in your life, I guarantee you, you would be extremely active in passing on the Buddha Dharma, just simply because you saw that there was this thing that happened to you that was very amazing that you could not explain. So that it was for that reason that it came, and that again goes back all the way to Shakyamuni Buddha and the faith that he derived from seeing this kind of what appears to be an anomaly in the physics of the world. Okay.
Could I maybe have a follow-up on this? Would it then be appropriate to say this was not Hui Neng's intention, or so it just, in a sense, causes and conditions like came together as a teaching, as an experiential teaching for the follower of Hui Neng?
Yes, and I think you're getting that. You kind of heard what I said, that this is not Hui Neng's wisdom. This is just, it's just mind and the power of the mind to do things like that. Of course, we don't do that, like trying to do Superman things, all the time to try to convince people that these things are very useful. Using it in that way would be kind of more of a vulgar display of things without having it really be something that leads to a great faith. If you keep doing it all the time, then you just be a magician. You'd be on America's Got Talent. Rochen.
Yes, Gilbert, Amitofo.
Amitofo.
My question is, it seems to me that Hui Neng had quite a few realizations, like the first time when he was selling wood, and then that was the first time he heard people recite the Dharma Sutra, and then and also the fifth patriot. My question is that when did he really realize enlightenment? Because it took him so many years to really, to stop from hiding and go out to expound the Dharma and really deliver people. So why took him so long for him to really go out, to expound Dharma and deliver people?
I kind of wonder about that myself, Rongchen. When I read it and I see it and I'm going, why did it take him so long? I think it was something that he needed to reach a maturation of his experiences and realizations, and that's very, very important. The sutras always talk about maturation of the practice, and that's probably what he was doing during that time period, is getting it all together, and then the causes and conditions of the time, perhaps as well, politically and socially, may not have been conducive at that time for him to appear. So he appeared at the right time, and so, but I'm not privy, and nor does any sutra or commentary mention, why he did that. I would say one is to have a full maturation of his realizations, but also the time, perhaps the climate was not right for him to go out. So, but it's a good question. Like I say, it's one that I've had for many years as well. Harry. Oh, you're muted.
Here I am.
There you go. Go ahead. Try again.
Okay. There we go. Omitofo. So I just want an observation that when you talked about the thought, produce a thought that's nowhere supported, I believe that line is also sometimes translated as abide nowhere and this mind will arise. It may be different, but I think it's the same thing. And I think it's just fascinating. It's saying the same thing coming from entirely different direction. So I just wanted to point that out and see what you thought.
Yeah, there is a sutra. I've taught on this. I don't know how long ago, maybe 3 years ago, on the dwelling place of Manjushri. And you can access that one through the 84,000 website. There's a website called 84,000, so it's easy to look it up. But that's an excellent one. If that kind of caught your eye in terms of this, please read that one. That will take you home. It's a good one. I mean, really, it's really, really good. And it's just an expansion on this one statement here. And so you kind of hit the marrow of that in terms of looking at it and studying that one, because I think that the abiding place of Manjusri is simply mind. There's no place there. There's eons. Got it already for us.
Okay.
This technology is very good for Buddha Dharma. Bad for the world in some ways, but for Buddha Dharma, it's good. But in any case, please do that and read it. I think you'll absolutely love it. And you can also, I don't know where to access it, whether by script or by recording, but I did speak at it at great length because it's such a wonderful sutra. But it is that idea of where does one dwell, and it doesn't negate the idea of a duality or anything, but it just says all those things belong to mind. So the Manjusri dwells in mind essentially, but there's no Manjusri there. It's just mind. So it's interesting. So that's why I say I think it will help you a lot, because it addresses that in great detail. Ani. Oh, he's muted. There you go.
Hi, Gilbert. Amitofo. In today's lecture, we learned that Huineng asked Huimin, do not give rise to a single thought. But somewhere in the Platform Sutra, Huineng also said that he does not cut off thoughts. I suppose that the cause and conditions are different, but I'm kind of interested and curious about why in this instance he asked or he advised Huimin not to give rise to a single thought.
They mean the same thing. It's just that from the viewpoint of samsara, it appears to be inconsistent. So it's a very, very good point for you, because I always have to struggle with what Neng has written in different places or spoken in different places and make sense of it. And because if you remember, I talked about there's a poem, and actually there's a poem, it's in the Platform Sutra about Wo Lun. And Wo Lun, was saying that he was always trying to cut off thoughts all the time. And Hui Neng was saying to him, Hui Neng has thoughts all the time. He doesn't try to cut them off. And the idea is that what we're dealing with is the clinging to the thoughts. Sometimes I talk about it, in terms of that. And if we have like a clinging thought, an akusala thought, then it's a clinging thought. And so that's the one that says, I'll take the chocolate ice cream over the broccoli, because there's an akusala, there's a clinging there. And then maybe afterwards, after you leave here, you go, what am I going to eat? No, I don't want broccoli, but I'd take some chocolate ice cream. And that's a clinging thought. And so what he's referring to is saying thoughts come and go. They're useful in the mind. So as the thoughts are coming and going, but they're coming and going so quickly and so easily. So when you use them in the right way, you actually don't have a thought. So there's no thought there, but it isn't that there's no formation of thoughts and no articulation in the language and in samsara. all of these things are just simply coming and going in a natural flowing way. But if one thinks about it and goes, what am I going to say? You got me, Anipan, I don't know, I don't understand what Neng said. And then I just come to a complete stop because of that. But the whole thing is that when you understand what he's talking about, this idea of Wu Nian, I think it's Wu Nian, this no thought, okay, does not mean that there's no thought. And that's what he was clarifying with Wo Lun, is because he talks about Wu Nian, and even Sheng Hui expands upon that as well. But this no thought is just simply the function of mind. And when one is functioning in mind, it just simply harmonizes with whatever needs to be there, and everything flows naturally. And so that's what he's meaning by this is that one can have thoughts, but the mind is still in a state of Wu Nian. And so the thoughts are just passing through like a stream. But the mind itself is like the water, it's still. And that's something that's very, very important. Again, these are the things that I think when you ask questions like that, those are sticky points that benefit or they're worth you looking into. Just like Harry with the part that he saw, all of these things are what we could call turning phrases, and you look at them and say, how is that then that it is? It is and it isn't. Yes, that's right. And you say, is it inconsistent? Only if you think of it from the viewpoint of samsara. But if you think of it from the natural function of mind, then these thoughts naturally come. We need not negate them or push them out. We just simply don't cling to them. So we have kusala thoughts. Kusala thoughts are not non-sticky thoughts. And so that's a difference. So Huineng's referring to these kusala thoughts that come through. And so he's saying he doesn't have to interfere with them because they're naturally appearing. The same thing as when you sit and you do wall gazing, when you wall gaze, you don't have to push any thoughts out. You push even the idea of the self onto the wall. And whatever arises, you just let it arise. You don't give any attention to anything, but you don't ignore it either. You're just aware that this is a function of mind. Everything is precisely appearing as it should. And so when we see things like that, the same thing with thoughts, the thoughts are naturally arising in order for us to function within the samsaric world. So I think that's the difference, because that's where Wu Yin fits in there, where he says, oh, he has a lot of thoughts, of course, but they're not sticky thoughts. It does not mean that his mind isn't in a state of Wu Yin, of no thinking. Okay, good questions.
Thank you.
You guys got going. Okay, Maybe.
Hi. Sorry, I thank you very much, Amitofo. It's a really awesome talk. Something that really stuck with me was about the skanda, like, because we're so in the body, like in this whole thing, that it clouds our thinking. Well, it clouds the mind, and so I'm just trying to understand, like, how do I get I know when I'm practicing, I'm just trying to stick to the method, and I guess, but I feel like I'm still so mired in the skanda, I guess, like, everything just happening, and even when I'm just trying to just stick to the method and just, but I'm still so like aware, right, of my body, and I don't know, I just feel like I'm still so stuck in the skanda, like all these things, and like, how do I get out of that, or do I just not bother, or I don't know what I'm doing.
I think you should I did a Chan magazine one on how to meditate, and I've done some classes on how to meditate. And I think that you would benefit greatly from that. The first thing you have to do is relax, and you stay with your method. You know what your method is. You are in the present moment, and you just stay in the present moment with the method, and you just keep relaxing. So whatever comes up, and there's going to be a lot of things coming up. The one master equated it is to be fighting an army of 10,000 warriors that are before you, and you have to be able to endure. And the thing that is overwhelming is recognizing how many thoughts come up. When we don't meditate, when we don't have any kind of attention to that, to us, we're ignorant as to how many thoughts come up. But as you begin to meditate, you begin to see not only the thoughts coming up, but you see all the way down to the formation of potential thoughts, and all of these potential seeds of thoughts that are there. It can be overwhelming, but if you relax and you see all of these things are naturally appearing in mind, you don't have to push them away. You just have to be patient. They will leave on their own accord because you don't pay any attention to them. So that may take a long time, but that's okay. As long as you're with the method, it's all right. You're doing it. And so if you stay with the method will not disappoint you. It will keep you there if you do it in the proper way. If you're thinking, I am doing the method, then you're lost. But if you just simply put the method in mind as a placeholder, then using the method as a placeholder, then you compare it to whatever else is arising, and the only thing that you want to give attention to is the method. Everything else that's arising, it's naturally there, but it's not the method, so you don't put that center stage in the mind. But what you're doing is you're putting the thought center stage, but they're constantly moving to center stage, one thought after another. But you should just see everything as it's arising, like on a wall. You just see all these things coming up, but they have nothing to do with what you're doing in that moment. You just leave them alone. It's just a lot of traffic, okay? It's as if one was meditating on a bridge over a freeway, and there's so many cars going by and going by and going by, but they have nothing to do with what you're doing. So you just let them go, because they're moving naturally in accordance with causes and conditions. Let them all go. It doesn't matter if some try to linger. Let them go, and then they will go. Okay. So I think that's the way you do that. If you can find, or somebody can give you some connection to some of what I've taught in the past about meditation, that would benefit you greatly. Okay, but hang in there. You're doing it right. The reason why I say you're doing it right is just simply because you become aware of how many thoughts are arising, and so in the beginning it feels overwhelming. Just have patience. You're doing it in the right way. Okay. Okay, Ron Chen's coming back.
Yes.
Didn't you already have a question?
Yes, I just have.
I'm kidding you. It's like a trick-or-treater that comes the second time.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the point. One is written by Shen Xiu, and the point written by Huinan. For average practitioner, it is very hard to have such a mental state, such a realization as Huinan, because he was born. He has a mission in life, and from what I read, there were two monks coming to give the names to Huinan when he was born. So his past is like Sigamoni is going to be, carry on his mission. My question is how much can we use the method of Shen Xiu in our daily practice? It seems to me that Shen Xiu's way is more gradual. It's more how much is like can it be incorporated into silent elimination or Hua Tou? That's probably more the way, until you get to the Huinan stage. It's one mind.
Okay. It's a good question in terms of what you're saying. But it's something that as you begin to practice, you understand that Hui Ning and Shen Shu are not, even though it was like Northern and Southern school, that dichotomy in part was created, politically created and whatever else. But what Shen Shu taught of working on a daily basis, that's fine. Hui Neng's attention was one of suddenly coming to a point of enlightenment. Here's where you're off a little bit, and that's that you're selling yourself short. You think that Hui Neng had some special thing that enabled him to be able to do that. But just like Master Ling Chi said, the minds of the Buddhas and the patriarchs are no different than yours. You come from a royal background. You're from the Ratna clan. The Ratna clan is the highest, the absolute clan. So don't sell yourself short. Don't think, oh, I can't do that because Hui Ning could do that. And Master Ling Chi, he was always saying, don't hold people up to this special level and say, I can never get to that point. That's baloney. Rong Chen, you possess the Buddha mind. You, as well as everybody that's listening to me, has the ability to reach where Hui Ning was or exceed him. You just have to understand that is why he was presenting sudden enlightenment, because this sudden enlightenment comes from sudden teaching. Wow, all of a sudden it's right there. So don't sell yourself short. Hui Ning would put his robe on the same way you put your pants on. Kind of a poor analogy, but I just realized that maybe they don't have pants in terms of what they're doing. But in any case, they do the same things as you did. So you can do it. Don't ever think that you cannot do that or that your mind is not worthy enough. It isn't in that way. You have to think, So just use that as a guide. We have LH.
Hey, Gilbert, thank you. So I just couldn't rename myself today. I don't know why. My name is Lei Hui. I need a little bit of guidance from you. I'm pretty new to the Dharma, and I've only read the Heart Sutra and the Kitti Sutra, and you've mentioned so many more. So I just would appreciate it if you could sort of guide me as to the order of the sutras that I should be reading. Thank you very
much. This is a very good question, and you're welcome to be here. And as a beginner, we should all maintain a beginner's mind. When I first started, I was overwhelmed by how many sutras there were, and I really didn't know where to go and what to do. It isn't necessarily the volume or quantity of sutras that you study. Little by little, as your practice matures, you will be drawn to sutras. Already, you said the Heart Sutra and Disampusa Sutra. Those are excellent sutras. They're because they embody this great vow. One of them is the perfection of wisdom that leads you in all directions, and all sutras come back to that seemingly as the hub of all sutras. The Disampusa Sutra is a very good one, and you were brought to that because of your roots, and so that's one that you should study. And little by little, you branch out from there and you begin to study other sutras. Sometimes you can be overwhelmed. The first time I started reading the Vatamsaka Sutra, I couldn't get anywhere with it. Anybody who's studied the Vatamsaka Sutra, I gave up after like 20,000 Buddha names, and realized I still had like 100 pages to go. I'm over exaggerating it, but I mean, in terms of that, but the sutra, sometimes what I do is I will take a sutra and I'll open it just to any page and start reading it. And and kind of use causes and conditions to see that, rather than trying to say that, you know, you start from here and you go here. Sometimes that mistake is made by people that are studying one book, and they want to get through that whole book. And I think that that's a mistake, because it will take them months and months to get through it. And the taste of it will become very bland. Rather than taking excerpts of books and having somebody present it and say what it means to them. You can't necessarily say that's teaching, you're just saying what it means to them, but it begins to let you share. And I think that that's a better way of doing things, rather than trying to take a big long book and say, okay, we're going to start here and we're going to go all the way through it, you know, and study it. So little by little, you will be drawn to things, and you will listen to sutras. If you come here to this one, you know, the amount of sutras that I talk about are manyfold, and doesn't mean that everybody picks up and reads it, but sometimes they do. And some of the senior students will get it and they make a connection to it, and then they start reading it. Let me see. Oh, my books are over there. But I you know, I have all sorts of books. You know, I don't know whether Ian, you ever how far you made it into Doctrine of Mere Consciousness. You know, but that's a big mouthful. You know, and but it's just something, little by little you become more familiar with the books, and you begin to understand how they work. So just be patient. The thing is to be patient and use middle way. So you want to continue to practice. You don't have to devote every waking moment to that, but you want to set aside time to practice, and perhaps practice a little meditation. You don't have to practice for very long in the meditation. People think that if they practice for an hour to sit in meditation, you know, that's going to lead them faster to enlightenment. But that's just like turning the fire on like full blast under a pot of chili beans. All you're going to do is burn the bottom of the pot. You use a middle way to do things, and that will be better. Sometimes when we try to do it very quickly, we lose our interest in it. But you've found yourself to a very good group of people here that are very supportive. Also, you can get on, if you haven't done that already, the Mind Work Forum. And if somebody can give her some kind of a connection there. And that forum has a lot of stuff for beginners, Chan 101, and questions that will be very helpful to you. So I would really welcome you to do that. So you don't have to like start reading a whole long sutra, but you can. But always remember that you came because of the Disampusa Sutra, so you have an affinity with that one. So that's good, okay? And you know that's kind of one you just go back to, you know, so you have that good connection to deep root, okay? Okay, I think we're done for the day. The questions were excellent today. I mean, it really helps. Sometimes, you know, when the questions are excellent like that, a lot of times I have given you food for thought. And whether you're a beginner or an advanced person, then that will be good. So I'm happy to see you again, and thank you for coming. So I will be signing off in a moment. Sue, where are you at? She's been traveling around. Can you unmute her? Can you unmute her, Santa, or does you need to? Oh, okay. Maybe she's pressing the button. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm still in the Big Sky, Yellowstone. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Quite a world traveler. She was going to Yellowstone. I told her the place was flooded. So, but anyway, she had sent me a picture of the Old Faithful, and I told her that it reminded me of her. And I said, you know, I'm not a geyser, I'm a geezer. So I'm older than her. She was a good sport about it. So yeah, it's good to see all of you. You know, Letty, how are you doing up there? Yeah, you've been on my mind, so I don't know if you needed to talk to me or something, but but anyway,
okay.
You're doing all right?
Yeah, a lot of a lot of life things. That's
yeah.
Dharma, not attach.
Just use your practice, and that will help you a lot. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Gilbert.
Oh no problem. I wish I could have an individual conversation with all of you, and maybe sometime at some holiday or something, we can have just a Zoom for everybody to join in and bring a little snack or cookie with you to your say, look what I'm eating, but to visit with you all. I always find this time at the end so short. I'm so happy that we'll be going and doing some live retreats and just meet some of you personally. So anyway, take care to you all. I'll have some dinner and I will see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.